much. And now we've got a number of questions that have been asked. I will also be keeping an eye on the chat if people want to ask questions in there. But my first question, and look, I've got the first question, and it's not simply because Marie-Therese has just spoken, because it's a question from Damien Duffy, who's the Director of Development at Belfast Met College, who asks the panel, what can we do to better align the interventions to support skills and employability to give us a better result in terms of economic recovery? I'm going to start with Peter, and if other members of the panel could just put their hands up if they wanted to come in, I will bring them in. Peter, would you like to kick off?
Thanks, Ian. I mean, a very, very cool question. It sort of links to this idea of a more coherent overall skills strategy and a policy strategy, which we have struggled with over many, many decades in this country. And of course, it's got to come from both sides, in the sense of, first of all, a clearer rhetoric, I suppose, from business about the kinds of skills that we need. And if I'm honest, I don't think we've been coherent enough as businesses often in the past about what are the kinds of skills we're going to need. And today, of course, there's a lot of debate about things like digital skills and other skills of that nature, quite specialist skills, and we can define some of those things. But as I've said, I think we've also got to focus on some of these core and transferable skills as well. So I think one of the key recommendations, which certainly I emphasize, this idea of getting employers together more with their local colleges so that you can talk about it in a much more collective way and a localized way. So I think we've got to take this idea of trying to get policy more aligned at the most strategic levels of government and at the nation level, but then have that conversation really working for us as employers and as FE college leaders at the local level about what skills we can see now, what we can see in the coming years, and make those two things work together.
That's really helpful. Paul, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I mean, I think that this is a classic case in the need for more joined-up government. I mean, joined-up government in Westminster and joined-up government between Westminster and the government in the nations as well. I mean, if I just think about the range of initiatives, some of which, I think are welcome from the Westminster government, whether it's the industrial strategy refresh, the Kickstarter scheme to get young people into work, the announcement that we saw on level 3 skills before. I mean, what we seem to have is announcement from department to department with nobody joining this stuff up in the middle. And one of the things the TUC's called for is for governments, in the face of COVID-19, to set up a national recovery council, employers, unions, colleges, governments working together to think this stuff through and to make sure policies support each other rather than compete against each other, and that there is some of that coherence centrally. I mentioned before the cut to union learning. It's obviously something I feel very passionately about, Ian, but that comes at a time when the Prime Minister is keen to give people a level 3 entitlement and get people without qualifications access to skills. I mean, the two decisions just don't stack up. So more coherence. And I think somebody said it on the panel before, government doesn't have all the answers. And I think the experience of the last 6 or 7 months, whether it's the job retention scheme would be a good example, the value of bringing employers and unions together, of sitting down and mapping out a joint way forward, it can't be overstated in my opinion.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to move on to the next question, which comes from Carol Stott, who's the Chair of Governors at Bath College, who asks whether the Commission has a view on the necessary steps to address articulation and progression across different parts of the system. And I wondered, Marie-Therese, whether you had a view on that, or Smita in a second. Marie-Therese, you're on mute.
Sorry, on mute. So I think we are a long way, as Carol's suggesting, we're a long way from trying to align those systems. We have a long way to go, but we have opportunities now and conversations happening, I think, at different paces in the different nations. And that was one of the issues that we came across regularly. But I think what happens and what is helpful is that if we are seeing progress in some parts of the UK, then we can use that as examples and exemplars to push and nudge the process in other parts. And I think that's kind of, for me, that cross discussion and that cross conversation about what each of us is doing and being able to demonstrate from an evidential base that certain things do work. We can get things kick-started. We can introduce things in other places. Well, let's try this as a pilot because it's working in Scotland, or it's working in Wales, or it's working in parts of England, or it's working in Northern Ireland. And I think that that was the richness of the report. You know, and as you said earlier, Ian, you know, it wasn't just the final 11 recommendations, but it's all the work that went in. And we have, as a commission, published a number of other reports, and we will continue to do specific reports on the 4 areas in due course over the next couple of months.
Great, thank you, Mary-Therese. Smita, did you have a view?
Just actually to endorse that point about learning from each other, because there are some really, really good pockets of, you know, things that are being tried around the country. And it's always a bit sad that we don't have a mechanism for sharing it. But I think the Commission has given us that opportunity, and we should seize it and learn and adapt, obviously always within the regional context. But there are things that are working in parts of the country, and we should just embrace those.
And I think this whole point that it's a 4 nations process is so important, you know, because there is so much best practice kicking around, and I think it really is important that we seize it and work together to do the best for all our learners. There's a couple of questions that have come up in the chat, and I've also got one from Louise Rowland, which are kind of aligned. And I'm going to come to you, Sonia, first on this. And it's, you know, what do you think about the role of digital technology will be in the college of the future? You know, we've talked about, I think absolutely rightly, colleges being at the heart of their communities, but, you know, without taking it too far to the point, with digital technology, the role of community may change a bit. And I wondered, Sonia, if you had a view.
Sure. So, I mean, I think on that point, I mean, there's got to be sort of more of a role for kind of digital technology in connecting us. And, you know, perhaps the pandemic sort of provides an opportunity to think about how it can be used more kind of in the context of colleges and how college education is delivered. But I think one thing actually that the pandemic has taught us is, you know, when you're learning, digital can never replace, you know, being in a room with people. So I personally think it's possible to put too much emphasis on that stuff, but I do think it has a really important role to play. And it's very interesting. I mean, I know less about how it's being used in colleges, but for example, you know, I know friends who've got kids in schools where actually, even though schools are back, they're still making use of digital resources, for example, for children to put homework in through Google Classroom and get comments back, even though they are in school. So, you know, that stuff has got potential. But for me, the main takeaway of the pandemic is, you know, you can't recreate being in the room physically with people.
Sonia, thank you. Peter, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just add a couple of thoughts. I think in many ways, learning and education is going to change and needs to change. We've got to find these blended ways of working. And whilst I agree with Sonia, of course, you know, physical connection, human connection is part of how we learn. But you know, modern techniques now with digital learning, you can create collaboration online as well. We've got to find better ways of delivering more bite-sized learning, which might add up into qualifications. I mean, Paul's point earlier about, you know, employers worrying about time away from work. Well, you can deliver deliver learning in lots of different ways. And I think this will be a really important agenda right across the educational system, as to how do we really take advantage of some of the new ways in which we can learn through digital, creating more flexibility in how we learn, more agility in how we learn, and better learning outcomes. And that will be a challenge for the sectors. It is for business as well, because we're going to have to retrain and upskill also how we create learning content and learning delivery in different ways. And that will be a workforce challenge as well.
And I just think it's worth, I'll abuse the chair by just saying that content is difficult to produce well because it's a different pedagogy, and we need to just recognise that very, very much. Paul, I'm going to allow you a quick note on this one, if I may, because I do want to get through one further question before we finish.
I'll be very brief, Ian, but just to say in summary, I don't think there is any contradiction between us being able to deliver more programmes online and in a blended way, and colleges still being at the heart of their local communities. And we've seen this with trade union education programs that we deliver through local colleges. That program's gone almost entirely online the last 6 or 7 months, but I know that reps still value the support from colleagues physically working in those centres as well. It's not going to, again, happen by accident, though. I think this is, the report points out the need to invest in the skills of the college workforce to be able to deliver programs online and in a blended way, and to support people to do that as well. I mean, I think we have to think about the mental health and well-being of staff who are going to be under an incredible amount of pressure. As you said, it's a different way of delivering education, and I think all too often it's seen as a cheap and easy way of delivering education. Actually, if you do online right, it's not just about, you know, efficiencies of scale. You need to invest in the systems and into the staff to make it work well.
Great, thanks. And my last question, I've got a last question that we're going to look at, and it's from Deirdre Hughes, and asks about careers advice, something that I think is incredibly important. And Deirdre asks, you know, looking ahead, what role should colleges perform in local communities as a provider of impartial careers support for young people and adults? Can FE colleges be truly impartial in the careers information and advice and guidance they give to individuals? Marie-Therese, can they?
Yes, they absolutely can be. In fact, they're probably the most neutral place to gain information in any part of the education system. And, you know, we're grappling in Northern Ireland with this, where, you know, it's gone into schools, it's gone into a kind of quasi-government service. But what we need is impartial advice that looks at what is best for the young people. And, you know, I believe, certainly in my experience in FE is a place that is prepared to give young people all sorts of advice. I mean, in my college, we sent people into apprenticeships. We sent them into higher level apprenticeships. We sent them to university. We sent them directly into jobs. In that context, I believe we were a neutral broker, because what was at the bottom was, how can we get this person a pathway to work? And I think that's what great FE does. So I do believe we can be that impartial broker.
Thank you very much, Marie-Therese. Smita and Sonia and Paul, and can you all keep your remarks to 30 seconds, because time is flying. Smita.
Yeah, it goes back to the importance of having a collaborative approach, because once you're collaborating, there's no reason why you can't be impartial. You don't gain anything by keeping learners who shouldn't be with you. You gain everything by the trust you build by referring people where they should be.
Superb, thank you. Sonia.
I was just going to say, I think this question is really pertinent given the questionnaire that we've all seen and probably done on the government website about giving future careers advice. And I think it really raises the question, what is proper, rich, wise advice, and how can young people get it? And I think just as important as a sort of lifelong approach to learning is a lifelong approach to advice in some ways, because this idea that a 16-year-old at one point or an 18-year-old at one point can just sort of download all this magic advice and it's going to transform the rest of their life, that is just not how young people and we as people even work. So I think the question of what a lifelong advice service looks like is important too.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Paul, the final word.
2 points here. And one, I think it's just really important that we respect the role of those who are providing careers advice and guidance. I mean, sometimes it's seen as an option, you know, someone does it on top of their day job. Actually, I mean, really investing in the people who are delivering this advice and guidance is important. But secondly, crucial for me, for the people that we represent, it's not just about young people leaving school or college or university. It's important that they get the right careers advice. Where does the 26 or 27-year-old who's been doing 2 or 3 dead-end jobs go for genuine, proper support, advice and guidance? At the moment, we tend to wait until people are unemployed for 6 months before we give them intensive support and careers advice. And I think colleges could absolutely play a really important role here, trusted in their local communities, working with others, including Job Centre Plus and all the rest of it. But it's got to be a key part of the offer from local colleges.
Paul, thank you very much. Peter, I'm going to give you 15 seconds. 15
seconds, yeah, just a real quick one. I mean, I absolutely agree with everything that's been said. Lifelong coaching and support in jobs is going to be important. We're talking about a life of jobs now, and it's all going to change. So we need that. I agree that FE plays a vital role and can be independent, but it does need the support of business and business people. Things like the Careers and Enterprise Company, which I've seen referenced, is a very good channel to help bring business people to work with the colleges and with the careers advice support teams to give that advice to their students. And it is a very important collaborative effort for all of us, I think.
Peter, thank you very much. That's brilliant. And thank you to Deirdre for a question which brought all 5 panelists to life in such an exciting way. And this brings me close to the end. I'd like to do a few things. Firstly to say, to reiterate the fact that it has been a 4 nations commission, and it has been a privilege to work with the governments of all 4 nations who have engaged absolutely fully in this. And I know that we will be following up this report with shorter nation-specific reports and continuing to engage with the governments right across our 4 nations to really hopefully take forward those recommendations within the national context. Could I just also say something that has come from all the speakers today, and which I think we're all passionate about? The moment is right, but the time needs urgent action. You know, we will be doing everything, the team will be working doing everything they can to push for that urgent action, but the moment is absolutely now in this dreadful pandemic to really make sure that we reskill and upskill our population ready for future challenges. Could I just absolutely thank you all for coming, but I just wanted to very quickly finish with just a few thanks. Thanks to our 5 speakers, brilliant provocations and brilliant discussions afterwards. But also, very, very finally, thanks do go to a few people who've already been mentioned, but I think it's important to mention. David Cragg was at the heart of thinking through the initial part of this and has been with us throughout the journey. David Hughes has really driven the change, but as has been mentioned before, Lewis Cooper and Philippa Allway have been geniuses in both maintaining pace, maintaining patience with the commissioners as we move through, and ensuring that we have the product that I think we are all incredibly proud of. And so finally, can I urge you all to continue to be involved as we move forward, because if we take this forward in the way we hope, this is a challenge for our entire nation, which will make our entire nation, I believe, a better place. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and thank you for all your help and interventions. Thank you very much.